Good morning once again. I'm still Michael Connolly. First of all, I'd like to introduce our chief guests on the dais, Mr. Rob Lynes, who's the Director of the British Council in India, Mr. Santhosh Panda, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, Alisher Umarov, who's the Chief of Education for the UNESCO Cluster Office, Monita Panda, Chairperson of the Centre for Multilingual Education Resource Consortium at JNU, Osama Munzer, CEO of the Digital Empowerment Foundation, and Cruz, who is a Language and Development Conference trustee. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to India for the conference, and the first time it's been held in India, and on the theme of multilingualism and development in perhaps the most multilingual country in the world. I myself arrived here in India about 4 years ago with a kind of a vague notion that most people spoke Hindi, and there was a large number of people who spoke Dravidian languages in South India. There was Bengali and Gujarati, and that was about the extent of my knowledge. So I got quite a shock on my first visit to Assam, and I found people speaking Assamese, Hindi, Bengali, as well as Bodo, Tiwa, Karbi, Mishing. The next time I went to Bihar, which I thought was 100% Hindi-speaking state, and I found people with Bhojpuri, Maithili, Angika, Urdu. I also found when I spoke to my British Council colleagues, I thought because they were speaking in English, it's because they worked for the British Council. And it wasn't. It was because sometimes they didn't have a mutually intelligible language among our team across India. So it's a massively varied multilingual society. Professor Mohanty yesterday at the pre-conference event at JNU also spoke about the number of tribal languages in India, hundreds of tribal languages, and it reminded me of my own country, Ireland, and our native language, Gaelic, which is spoken, unfortunately, by a very small minority of the population. One of our great writers, Flann O'Brien, who wrote about the Gaeltacht, or Irish-speaking area of Ireland. His book was called Ambel Bocht, or The Poor Mouth. And he talked about the variety of expression available in the Irish language. In slightly humorous writer, he said, in Donegal, there are native speakers of Irish who know so many words that it's a matter of pride to them never to use the same word twice in a lifetime. But here we are. I'll have to make do with the paucity of expression available to me in English. I'm a kind of a living example of the need to protect our endangered languages and cultural heritage. So to begin today, I'd like to introduce the Director of the British Council in India, Mr. Rob Lynes, to give the welcome address. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Michael, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, namaskar, suprabhat, and good morning. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today and a privilege to be actually hosting this prestigious biennial Language and Development Conference in India. I'd like to start by actually thanking our partners, the Ministry of Rural Development, JNU, Digital Empowerment Foundation, Research Councils UK and UNESCO for their support in making this conference happen. Without that, we wouldn't be here today. And as Michael has said, this is actually the first time this conference has been held here in India. And I cannot think of a more appropriate country to host this event, particularly, as Michael has said, because of the linguistic diversity of India and, of course, the wonderful hospitality of the country. According to the 2011 census, India has more than 120 languages spoken by more than 10,000 people. The northeast of the country, for example, has more languages per 1,000 residents than anywhere else in the world. And this includes Arunachal Pradesh, one of India's smallest states with less than 1.4 million people, yet it has 90 languages. And I'm also delighted that this conference has attracted such a wide range of participants. We had 155 proposals for papers from over 40 countries. And the final programme includes 75 presentations, of which 30 are from international speakers, which makes this a truly international conference. And each of our speakers today will be discussing work in 20 different countries around our main theme of multilingualism and development, and 3 broad themes of multilingualism and metropolis, language, technology and multiliteracies, and multilingualism, marginalization and empowerment. And these are issues that not only reflect the rapidly changing reality in India and South Asia, but many other developing and developed countries too. Take, for example, multilingualism and the metropolis. The rapid urbanization being witnessed in India and many other countries in South Asia and elsewhere brings in its wake significant challenges for policymakers in a number of aligned areas. The challenge of providing a comprehensive education system for linguistically hyperdiverse cities, especially for those citizens who have limited knowledge of mainstream languages. The challenge of migrants in cities when they want to access healthcare or the courts and attain the right language skills to get on the employment ladder and then move up it. Linguistic hyperdiversity is as much a challenge in the developed world as it is in developing countries. Over 300 languages, for example, are spoken in schools in London, which is a huge resource, but also testing for educators and policymakers. And our second sub-theme of technology and languages also offers enormous opportunities as well as challenges, and this is a rapidly changing area. It's predicted that by 2020, local languages will account for 30% of revenue in digital advertising. Google reports that content consumption in Hindi, India's national language, is growing at a staggering rate of 94% per annum. Another 270 million internet users in India, almost half, around 127 million, are local language users, with more than 46 million in rural India. That's the size of Spain. Twitter, for those who use it, has just added 4 more languages in Indian: Gujarati, Marathi, Tamil and Kannada. And that's on top of 3 existing ones of Hindi, Bengali and Urdu. And in fact, the total number of languages in which one can use Twitter today across the world is over 50 and growing. And finally, for those who are looking for a new mobile, Micromax, an Indian company that sells handsets, has just launched a new smartphone with 20 Indian languages. That's 19 more than Apple. Enabling local language content alone will increase internet access by 39% in India, and 75% which will be from rural areas. So language technology is changing fast and is changing lives. Languages, as we know, connect and empower, but also exclude and disenfranchise those who do not speak them. And this is the third sub-theme of our conference, which explores how languages interact with each other in social, economic, and political contexts. And this theme covers ideas as diverse as pluralism, the rights of minority groups, and women in society. And it also addresses the benefits and the challenges of using children's home language as a language of the classroom teaching, and the challenge of providing healthcare and other public services to those who do not speak either the national or mainstream languages. Now, I know that each of these themes are relevant to the countries that you work in, and they are also relevant to us. The British Council is committed to what international research has repeatedly shown, that the importance of the mother tongue-based multilingual education in early years of schooling. And we are a signatory of the Juba Declaration on Language and Education in Africa, which affirms this. And we are also committed to helping raise the standards of language education in general, education and including English, and highlighting the benefits of multilingual education. And I hope that the legacy program that will emerge from this conference will generate research and action agendas, lead to language and education policy documents, and that these initiatives will be taken forward by those present here today and those following around the world. So thank you all again for joining us. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have an enjoyable and fruitful conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'd like to invite Alisher from UNESCO Cluster Office South Asia to the stage. Thank you.
Good morning, namaste, salam alaikum, and I can continue in other 14 languages because UNESCO has 199 member states. And if you multiply this number to the number of languages for which UNESCO call as the agency who should preserve, look after, nurture the multilingualism and education in mother tongue, bilingualism, and promotion of learning of peace, tolerance, and everything in different languages, then I should be speaking the same words a little bit longer. That's why let me just say good morning to every one of you. And I would like to greet that Rob, on his behalf, the British Council, with this very wonderful conference. It is actually a very thrilled conference. It's the first time on Indian soil. And the first time it's actually organized on the moment of the division between Millennium Development Goals and New Sustainable Development Goals. And it's also the first time it's organized with very diverse participants. Because in UNESCO, mostly we call for our meetings experts, politicians, policymakers, civil society organizations, and we want to treat them a little bit, say, separately to speak about their own needs. But this is an opportunity to speak to everyone. And from another point of view, I also very much thrilled because British Council had been able to bring here so many language experts. And I will be a little bit having problem to chairing session. If I say something, please consider I am not specialist in linguistics. But my graduation in mathematics, and Isaac Newton keeps saying mathematics is also one of the languages. I also would like to congratulate Mr. Santhosh Mathew, on his behalf, Government of India, who is actually co-hosting this event and who is actually doing a lot on promotion of the languages for development. And I think you should be a little bit wondering why he's not here from Ministry of Education, but he's here from Ministry of Rural Development. I should tell you honestly, I think Ministry of Rural Development has a touch through different languages to many language issues on the ground. Because most of the population of India who speaks diverse languages, they are not in cities, they are in rural area. And you can imagine how this ministry actually should handle the great big-scale projects and programs in order to reach everyone and keep happy them in their own languages. I also would like to greet here Professor Monita Panda, who is actually one of the passionate experts in India, and she is always leading the research work, and this research work goes for every single small villages, and then she comes with very shocking research saying, you know how many people now speaking of this language? Only 2. And I always wonder how they found them and how they speak to them in those two in that almost losing language. I also very much should say that UNESCO is about development of language issues not only for teaching the cultural expression, but also today's era it is internet, it is web, it is ICT. We have a huge project on multilingualism in cyberspace. In this area, I want to greet Mr. Osama Munzer, who is also our co-organizer. But besides that, I want to say that UNESCO right now is holding a general conference, and you heard about the last Friday unfortunate events which happened in Paris. And that actually happened when we just about to celebrate 70 years of UNESCO, which had been designed and created to bring the peace to the minds of the people. And this was again, one more time, a reminder for the issue that many intolerances actually comes out of miscommunication. And miscommunication comes also not having that language working for that proper development. And I hope this conference will come also to those issues, and we can bring not only the linguistic development, but also we can look how language can support and contribute for the development agenda. Regarding Sustainable Development Goals, there is 17 Sustainable Development Goals. You just name every goal, and you can find language issue there. But one goal is dedicated for education. That is SDG 4. And I have to tell you, when we adopted those goals, they had been also nominated targets. And within the targets, we usually put some kind of indicators to monitor. Right now, we should adopt that indicators. And the first time ever, we put one indicator for which we will be asking member states to submit us data, and we want to monitor that. That is number of students of primary school who are studying in their home or mother tongue and completing the primary education in that manner. Because that is becoming issue number one, because any learning actually starts easy if you start on your mother tongue or your home language. But until now, we've been asking member states to say how many students you have in different language background at home, but we never collected data how many of them actually got this instruction. You may say I'm just speaking in abstract way, but I can give you data. 2.6 billion population in the world, they don't have access for education in their own or home, in their own mother tongue or home languages. That is a big number. I think I should remind you that India's population is 1.3. That means double population of India doesn't have this kind of luxury. However, we always look for the development for the future. And when we have this kind of nice gathering, we always thrilled that the outcome will be very much amazing. It will be joint. I hope that will also affect to the research, to some policy development, but also I hope by the end of this conference, every one of us become an ambassador to promote languages for the peace, tolerance, to promote multilingualism, and to promote teaching and learning in mother or home languages. That's why I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of UNESCO, our ambassadors for language and development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alisher. I'd like to welcome Monita Panda, Chairperson of the Centre for Multilingual Education Resource Consortium at JNU.
Namaskar and good morning. I join my colleagues at British Council in welcoming you to this conference of immense importance to this country. If I look at myself, what constitutes me, then I probably come down to its diversity. I am Indian because I can speak many languages. The very linguistic diversity, the cultural diversity constitutes me and my consciousness. This is true about every African, every Asian, also American and Europeans. In fact, the countries, if we look at countries across the globe, the countries that have neglected its own languages, its own culture, haven't developed. The economic programs are not sustainable, and as Kaplan says, many states are, he calls them fragile states. And the fragile states in Africa are the ones that have founded its own education on external or exogenous or international languages, ignoring or at the cost of its own languages. So I think a country's development is almost centrally, dependent on whether its own languages and own cultural resources are included or the developmental projects are founded essentially on its own cultural and linguistic resources. So, I come from National Multilingual Resource Consortium. The founder, director of NMRC is sitting here, Professor Ajit Mohanty. We started this consortium with a belief, with an agenda rather, to support educational programs in a manner that we foreground all the educational discourses on the multilinguality of this country. And we believe that we cannot dream of a truly inclusive society without attending to, without actually helping every child getting included in the classroom. And the first resource, the first thing that excludes the child is language in a primary class. When we had our own independence in 1947, we were giving, and after independence, we also continued giving school education, especially primary education, in 41 languages. And I think we were one of the few countries that went for that many languages, imparting school education in that many languages. Higher education was imparted primarily in English, but still in many regional languages. But soon after independence, higher education was imparted in around 24 languages. Media was using nearly 82 languages. But having said this, this country, which has historically, proven to be inclusive by including so many languages after independence in academics, in media, and official transactions, at the same time excluded many hundreds of languages. And if we look at the poverty data and actually spot people who are poor, 70 to 80% of them speak the languages that are not included in our school education. So one clearly sees a relationship between poverty and neglect of multilinguality. I think what we liked about this conference is that this conference is going to centrally discuss the relationship between multilinguality and development. And all educational discourses are to be founded on multilingualism, or the principles of a multilingual society. I think that's the major reason why we came on board to support this program. And on behalf of NMRC, I extend my support, and we wish that this conference leads to more meaningful discourse in the area of education, where dominant languages, whether they are Indian languages or international languages, are not allowed to grow in this country at the cost of people's languages. There is no hierarchy between languages, and the school education should not create or maintain the old hierarchy or create new hierarchies among languages. The moment we create that, we create hierarchies among people, among communities, and in the process we marginalize many. And certainly we marginalize the more vulnerable ones. So as long as we are working together and towards a goal of achieving inclusive society, we are with you. Thank you. And I welcome you to this conference with my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'd just like to thank you once again for JNU, who hosted a pre-conference event yesterday on the theme of language and poverty. Thank you very much for the pre-conference event, Minati. I'd like to introduce Osama Munzer, who's the CEO of the Digital Empowerment Foundation.
Sabeke Ram Ram, Kalwa. How many people can understand this language? Just 2? Okay, I was speaking in Bhojpuri. I said Ram Ram means I was wishing, good morning. And Ka Halba means, how are you? Thank you for inviting me. Actually, the reason I told in that language is because there is a language of culture and the culture of the language. I think whenever we are talking about, saving the culture of the language, saving the language, you always talk about culture, heritage, and depth of the language to save it. But I think we are also in the last 100 years or 50 years, we are more following the language of some culture and not the culture of some language. That's the biggest issue, I think, because, and that's what there are some languages whose culture we follow, whose language we follow, and we become powerful, and we become, elite, and we become whatnot. And all those people who are at that stage want to save the language of those who are dying. And you can only save those languages, I think, who are who cannot speak the language of the power. And when you speak the language of the power, then only perhaps you can speak, you can save the language. These are very dichotomical situations that we are passing through, in which we are very delighted to be partner here. I am Osama Munzer. I head the organization called Digital Empowerment Foundation, which has nothing to do with culture or language or anything good in life, I guess. But it is, as it says, digital, because digital is the culture, digital is the language of the modern era. And that's why we take that entire digital to the world, and especially to the areas where there are multicultural, multi-heritage. They live in remote areas, what you call as rural areas, where you still get oxygen, unlike in urban areas. The opportunity to work with British Council as a partner in Digital Empowerment Foundation is the following. One is because we all know that digital is no more just a gadget or no more just a technology, but it is a medium. Like the way we had written as a medium, oral as a medium, digital as a medium. And that is our inspiration to work in most of the part of the country. We are present in about 150 locations in India and in 23 states and 60 districts. And many of them are northeastern states where lots of languages are spoken. Our learning from the ground is that for the first time in the history of humanity, the technology has developed to match the nature, because every human being is born with the natural power of oral, speaking in a language of orality. And now digital is the medium which is actually catching people in their natural language. Unlike asking them to first become literate not because you are illiterate, literate because you don't know the medium of communication which is written. So now the medium of communication is oral, and gradually, catching in the oral. It is becoming very inspiring that how we use the digital as a medium of capturing those languages, those culture, those wisdom, those information and knowledge which is hidden in the remote areas of the country. And that inspiration makes us to come here and learn from all of you. I would like to end up my introduction by saying that I was very privileged to meet a person yesterday night in the dinner from Bhutan who mentioned to me that his country has got only one woman left who is 86-year-old, and she's the only one who speaks a language of a particular language in Bhutan, and with authority, and there is no other person after that to talk about it. So if you think of gravity of the dying languages all over the world, it becomes very, very serious issue. And therefore, I would like to pledge and would like to request all of you that let's choose at least one language in our life which we do not know and which is endangered, to do something for that language and culture to save them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Osama. I'd like to invite Jeffrey Cruz, who is one of 10 language and development trustees.
Thanks, Michael. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate we're running a bit short of time, so I'll be brief. As Michael said, I'm one of 10 trustees for the Language and Development Conference series. The Language and Development Conference began in 1993, hosted by the Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok. The focus of that conference was the role of English language in development projects. But in discussing that conference and the feedback from it, we realized at that time that we needed to go broader than just the role of English language. And so from the second conference onwards, we looked at the broader role of language in development. Areas such as the role that they play in economic, social and cultural development, language policy, language rights and identity, technology and language pedagogy. And many of the themes are evident in the program for this, the 11th conference. Different organizations have hosted the conference over the years, and representatives from those organisations make up the conference trustees. And there'll be representatives from the organisations which have run this conference will be invited to become trustees. And so they can share their expertise and experience from this conference with those who run the 2017 conference. One of the roles of the trustees is to work with people who are interested in organising the conference. You'll notice in your program that this evening at 17:35 in Regency 1, there is a meeting open to everybody where the expressions of interest, well, the conversation will begin about where the 2017 conference might be held and who might be interested in running it. So you're all welcome to attend and to be either just to hear that discussion, or if you represent an organisation who's interested in knowing more about running a conference in 2017 or in the future, then you're more than welcome to come this evening. It's only, I just want to make sure it's only initial finding out about it, so please don't be put off by anything. There's no commitment by anybody at this stage. One of the other roles of the trustees is to run the Language and Development Conference website. On page 7 of your program, you'll see in the green box there a website address, www.langdev2015.org. And that website has the details of conferences which have been held in the past, and most importantly has free downloadable publications from most of the conferences that have been held, the proceedings and the papers from those conferences. So they may be of interest to many of you to see what the issues that have been discussed in conferences in the past. So I recommend that website to you if you'd like to know more about the conference series and how it's developed. So I look forward to seeing you with the fellow trustees this evening at 5:35. And I'd just like, in closing, to thank the British Council and all the organisations for hosting the 11th conference. They're the ones who have done all the work. The trustees are just in the background being as an advisory group, but we're very appreciative and grateful for the work they've done, and I wish you all the best for a wonderful conference. Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. At this moment, we're going to do a traditional Indian ceremony, which is to light the lamp. So can I invite the guests from the dais to go to the front of the stage? Thank you. I'd like to invite Santhosh Mathew, for Joint Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, to give our inaugural address. Thank you.
On behalf of the Rural Skills Division of the Ministry of Rural Development, I'd like to welcome all of you and the 11th Language and Development Conference to India. It's a privilege for us in the ministry to be a partner in this event. As some of you may know, this ministry has the mandate to coordinate the poverty reduction aspects of government's intervention. And in doing that, we have a number of programmatic frameworks. Largely, we do work in providing rural connectivity through road building. We provide assistance to poor people who are homeless in acquiring land and in building homes. We have a program that provides 100 days of job guarantee for those who are able and willing to do hard manual labor. We also have a social protection program through which we provide pensions to people who are disabled, who are old, and otherwise unable to work. But all of this we do by trying to organize rural women through self-help groups through what is called the National Rural Livelihood Mission. And in all of this, as you would have recognized through my description of our programmatic framework, I'm not sure we fully understand the role of language in both development and more particularly in poverty reduction. Therefore, we look to you, experts in this field, and through deliberations over the next 3 days, for us to learn more on how we need to be sensitive and to be able to harness the potential that language offers in development and particularly in poverty reduction. That's one part of the agenda that we have and what we hope to be a takeaway from your deliberations here in the ministry. We also have another agenda which I want to lay before you. And this agenda has to do again with our poverty reduction agenda and the ambition that our Honorable Prime Minister has set for the country to become the skill capital of the world. The world today is going to face almost a shortage of 50 million skilled workers, largely in the richer parts of the world, because of declining population and declining and an aging population. We believe that India has an economic opportunity here to be able to benefit from that shortage, because our surplus is also somewhere in that region. In the ministry, I as Joint Secretary run a program which is called the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, DDUGKY for short, where we are trying to skill rural poor youth and to get them into jobs that can give them a regular wage. And in this, we are agnostic to trade because our focus is poverty reduction. We depend largely on private sector providers whom we fund. And through their aegis, through the training that they would provide, we are trying to secure jobs for the rural poor youth who would otherwise find it very difficult to access these jobs. And these are typically people who face 3 kinds of disabilities. One is a disability because the formal education system has failed them. They're typically school dropouts. The other is a disability that comes out of poverty and all the associated problems with it. And third is a disability that comes from not having skills that they can sell in today's modern marketplace. So how do we work with this group of people so that their economic empowerment journey can begin in a way that their families can benefit from it, and they're also not threatened by the problems that today the modern youth face, especially when it involves migration, the threats of substance abuse, sexual abuse, and a whole unseating from the social mores that they were otherwise enmeshed in their rural life. In this, we believe that the English language has an important role to play. And here we are seeking and looking for answers as to how we can equip these people with functional English. And here I'm using the whole idea of functional English purely as a tool, not so much for the development of the person, but for enabling them to access both global jobs and jobs that require migration within India because of the multilingual character of our country. And there we are having quite serious problems. Lack of people who have the ability to teach people of this kind, good quality course material that does not cost the earth, so that we can afford it to provide to such a large number of people. For example, the size of the program that I run, DDUJKY, currently, we have projects worth $710 million that will benefit 1.31 million rural poor youth in the next 2.5 years. So that's the scale of the operation that we have. We are running this in over 5,000 classrooms spread over 20 states in this country. So we need have the means, the wherewithal, the expertise and the insight to be able to provide them the functional English like it would be for example, if we are going to train somebody to be a carpenter or somebody to be a driver or somebody to be a plumber, in our current programmatic framework, there are 3 other things that this person will be taught or skilled in. One is in IT. Person will have access to a personal tablet, will have access to an IT lab, would be taught functional IT so they're able to use the modern communication tools and the modern tools to be able to become functional in IT. The second aspect of our training, irrespective of trade, is to give what is called employability skills, the soft skills that are required to be able to secure and then maintain the jobs of today. And the third is functional English. So it is this functional English tool in which area we are looking for help and your wisdom and how we can take this agenda forward. So this, ladies and gentlemen, are the 2 principal motives for our association with the 11th Language and Development Conference. We look to you for advice and for insight. And once again, on behalf of the ministry, I welcome all of you to New Delhi and wish you all the best for these 3 days of discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mathew. And we'd like to thank you personally for your commitment to the conference. You personally and your ministry have been very supportive from the moment we came up with the original idea. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank all our panelists, for want of a better word. Could you give them a round of applause? Thank you very much. Just a few more housekeeping announcements. You might notice that we all have green lanyards. This is for delegates. If you check outside, you'll find anybody with a red lanyard is an organizer for the conference. So if you need any help with any matter, the red lanyards are for organizers. I noticed the team give me a green lanyard, which is perhaps a comment from them on my organizational capabilities. I'm not quite sure. They don't see me as an organizer. A few other announcements. We have a prayer room, which is on the 3rd floor next to the swimming pool. If you want to connect to the internet, but you're not a guest at the hotel, you can collect a Wi-Fi password from Regency 4, which is in the basement. Debanjan has just told me our Twitter handle is @InBritish. And you can tweet to us using hashtag LangDev2015. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm not really a Twitter person, but anyway. The sessions are being webcast live, and you can follow them on Twitter or on Facebook. I think that's about it. I'd like now to invite Hywel Coleman. Hywel is also a trustee of the Language and Development Conference, and he's also been the academic advisor to us on this 11th conference. Hywel, thanks.
Namaste, Assalamualaikum, Selamat pagi, good morning, everybody. Thank you to Michael for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to talk briefly about the program. I should begin by saying that when we began talking about the theme for the 11th conference, multilingualism and development, we were inspired by the work of Professor D.P. Patanayak, and we quote from one of his 1984 publications in the call for papers and also in the conference handbook. And I'm very happy to see Professor Patanayak is sitting at the front here. In all the work that's taken place over almost a year, since the beginning of 2015, we've been working very closely with Dr. Debanjan Chakrabarti. Is he here? He's left the room. I'd like to express a special thanks to Debanjan and his team, who have worked immensely hard. As you've heard already, the overall theme for the conference is multilingualism and development. And in our initial thinking, and I hope that it's still felt in the program, we're keen not only to celebrate multilingualism, linguistic diversity, multilingualism implemented in education programs such as MTB, MLE, mother tongue-based multilingual education, not only to celebrate, but also to look at problems, to look at challenges, and to look at the risks associated, the limits to multilingual programs. So we'd like to see a sort of a questioning approach, not only a celebratory approach, but also a questioning approach to the discussions. You've heard also from Michael that we have three sub-themes. The first sub-theme is multilingualism and the metropolis. And here, I think one of the aspects that we'd particularly like to hear about and discuss is linguistic superdiversity. How can education systems, health services, public services in general respond to the increasing linguistic diversity in the huge cities of the developing world? I live in Jakarta. We have 700 languages in Indonesia, and a large number of those languages are in daily use in Jakarta. The education system uses only one language, the national language, Bahasa Indonesia. The health service uses only one language. So let's explore the challenges that are faced by providers of government services in such linguistically super diverse contexts. The second sub-theme we've heard about is language, technology, and multiliteracies. And the third sub-theme is multilingualism, marginalization, and empowerment. And it so happens that the largest number of proposals that we received fell into this third sub-theme. So when you look at the program, when you look at the conference planner, you will see the conference planner uses multiple colors representing the diversity of our program. The light green, yellow, sub-theme represents multilingualism and the metropolis. Because of the light, I can't distinguish between the next two sub-themes. A sort of blue color represents sub-theme 2, language, technology, and multiliteracies. and a sort of purple color is subtheme 3, multilingualism, marginalization, and empowerment. But you'll also see that some of the items in the program are not colored. This is because they will probably cross subtheme boundaries. So the program consists of plenaries. We have 6 plenary speakers, parallel sessions, approximately 50 parallel sessions. We have workshops. We have student forums, 3 student forums, 4 workshops. We have 4 featured events. These include a debate, a panel discussion on multilingualism in India, where are we now? Another panel on a ministerial panel with representatives from various governments. Probably about 4 or 5 governments will be represented, which will be led by Carol Benson, exploring governmental responses to multilingualism. And then we also have a considerable number of featured speakers. At the beginning and end of each parallel session in the conference planner, you will see information about the featured speakers and the featured events. Among the topics, Michael's already mentioned some of the sub-themes, but a couple of the issues that I'd like to highlight are the threats to the diversity, to linguistic diversity, which are being experienced in many parts of the world. As I said before, we have 700 languages in Indonesia. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking at a university in Sumatra, where people were telling me how speakers of some local languages now denied that they could speak those languages because they felt that those languages were in some way inferior. And they were claiming to be native speakers of more prestigious languages. So we see threats to linguistic diversity like this in many parts of the world. And I can see that many of the presentations are going to explore this sort of threat. And another sub-theme is the growing phenomenon of so-called English medium low-cost primary schools. And this phenomenon is arising in many parts of South Asia and Southeast Asia. And I can see that several of the speakers are going to explore this phenomenon as well. And this is also going to be the subject of the debate. So we have an extremely rich program, more than 70 sessions. You won't have any free time. The program is packed from morning until evening. There are approximately 20 countries represented in the program. There are people from more than 20 countries here. And I suspect that is the largest range of countries represented in all the conferences that we've had so far. Maybe my fellow trustees can confirm that. So after the conference planner, you will then find a very, very substantial section of the conference handbook, which provides session abstracts day by day. Each abstract with brief information about the speaker can be found there in chronological order of presentation. And then towards the back of the handbook, you will find a section called feedback forms, like this. And we're going to try to do something that we haven't done in previous conferences. As I said, we want to be questioning, not only celebratory, but also questioning. And we would like you to contribute, everyone here, to contribute to the creation of a series of research agendas and action agendas. So what we would like you to do at the end of each day is to fill in one of these forms you will find in the book. There is one for each day. And the first side of the form is called Agenda for Research, and the second on the back is Agenda for Action. And during the sessions that you attend and the discussions you take part in, informal discussions and formal discussions, we'd like you to be thinking about what do we not yet know? What research is still needed? Whether there is any possibility of you doing that research yourself, or you can think of an organization that should be doing it, or just we need more information, we need more ideas. Put it down. What research do we need that still needs to be done? And particularly, in what context do you think that research needs to be done? Maybe you can think, in my country, we need to learn more about X, or in my particular institution, we need to investigate Y, or I think this country, or developing countries in general, should be investigating these issues. Make notes of these thoughts about research. And then on the back, hopefully you will have been inspired by the presentations that you hear, and you can begin thinking about what action is needed now after the conference, either at yourself individually, your institution, your nation, or generally. So make notes about the sort of action you think that we need to be doing, and the context in which you think that action should be taken. And then, at the end of the day, when you filled it up, tear it out and hand it in. There will be people standing around, helpers standing around at the exits, and give your paper to the helpers. And do that for each day, please. And then what we will try to do over the next few weeks is compile all this. I don't yet have a clear idea of what it's going to look like, but we're going to try to compile all your ideas and your thoughts about research and action and create some agendas. And these agendas we will feed back to you. We will include the agendas in the conference publication, which will appear next year. And also specifically for India, the agendas for research and action will be the foundation for the ongoing legacy program that follows from this conference. I think that's all that I've got to say. I'm very, very excited about this. We've all been working extremely hard, and I can hardly believe that everybody's actually here and that it's happening. Enjoy the next 3 days. And just one note final note is to underline what Jeff was saying earlier. Please come to our meeting at the end of today, meet the conference trustees, not necessarily because you want to host another conference, but to find out more about what we do and how we work. And we'll be very happy to talk to you. So thank you for your attention, and happy conference.